This is a recording for St. Gabriel's Guidance Inquiry Part 2. We're going to switch this to webinar mode due to my illness, which I apologize that I cannot be there with you as I had planned to, but I'm going to reconfigure this training so that you can still do it as an independent study, and you'll be able to follow along as far as you want to. We can still make this so that it will be 6 hours of TRIS credit, so hopefully that will work out for you all. I feel really bad, but I don't want to make you sick by coming, as I am contagious. So here we go. So for the session we were supposed to have today, February 17th, you had a pre-session independent study to complete, and that was going to be for 1 credit hour. So what I'd like you to do is spend a little time talking with each other about those results, and be able to share those results with each other so that you all kind of know, where you fit into looking at the executive function. We began talking about that last time, and I'm going to go over that in a separate recording and let you make some notes to use from this portion of the training. So what I'd like to do is you'll have a little sheet that goes along with this where you can fill in as we go, so that you can receive this independent study credit that goes along with the webinar credit from TRIS. And I wanted to start with expectations that we have in our guidance inquiry process. And if you remember last time, we went through that sheet rather quickly, and there was a lot of interest in following up with going through that in more depth. So one of the pieces that we look at when we think about guidance in young children and children that we are thinking about is looking at their development. So you're looking at the child's development, but also your own in terms of executive function. So what I would like for you to do is consider using the pre-session independent study sheet where it goes through the skills involved in young children's development of executive function. I'd like you to go through each of those, and again, you'll have a sheet to fill out for this, but I'd like you to evaluate the children in your own classroom, where you think each of them fall in those developmental spaces for executive function, and also your own as an adult. Where do you think you fall? Do you feel like you are you confident about those skills in yourself and your ability to manage a lot of input? I mean, you are in an early childhood classroom, so chances are you're good at it, or you're getting good at it, or you're finding out this is really a struggle for you and you need support to get better at it. And in terms of impulse control, how are you doing with that? How are you doing with managing memory and things like that are part of executive function? So this will be a long process for you. You would probably want to pause the recording here and stop for a while and work together on that, and then come back to the recording. So if you have to press pause, no problem. Just go ahead and do that. And I would encourage you to be working with the people who are your team members. And again, you might want to take that sheet, the executive function sheet that has the list of these skills and the developmental processes. And remember, we're thinking about kids very differently now because of COVID. We know there have been things that have gone on that where they may be not as far along in their development of executive function as they would have been had they, not gone through this whole issue of COVID. There are going to be some kids that are with you, that's all they ever knew. They're, when they were born right before COVID and they didn't go to preschool consistently until maybe this year. So just keep all of that in mind as you're working with it, and keep it in mind for yourself as you're working with it. So like I said, if you need to, go ahead and pause. Whatever you fill in on the sheet, your Sharon and Kat will send to me for your TRIS credit. So that will be one piece you will submit. Okay, now we're going to, again, where do I feel confident? Where do I need support? So that's in the sheet that you'll be filling out. And again, pause for as long as you need to. Have a really good discussion about the children in your classroom and yourselves in the area of executive function. And you'll be using all of the pre-session sheets you were given to complete. So now what I want to do is go through the list of items that are on the checklist sheet that I introduced to you last time, but I'm going to go through them a little more in depth. And the first one is physical issues. So we've looked at developmental issues with this child, like if you're thinking about a specific child and you're filling out this checklist that starts with expectations of development and now goes on to look at physical issues. So you'll be working with your colleagues, and again you'll be looking at what are my own physical issues and what are the issues that I see the children in my class having, or a child in particular. If you're looking at one or two particular children, I'm going to leave that choice up to you. So the first area is physical issues. We always look at this first because we want to eliminate any possibility that there's something going on with the child that has to do with something physical that's happening for them that we're not aware of, or that we need to consider. We need to eliminate this as a possibility. So what are those areas? The first one is water. Are you getting enough water? First of all, are you modeling drinking water in your classroom for your children? And are the children getting enough water? This sounds like a really basic kind of thing because it is. But most of the time, what I find is there are a lot of children and adults that are just plain old dehydrated. And that can lead to breakdowns in executive function. You don't think as clearly, you can't act as confidently and in ways that you want to. And it's really hard on children. So water. The next one is protein and hunger. I know a lot of us already know that when your blood sugar gets low, especially if we're female, we really struggle with that. Some of us have issues around that hormonally, so we may already be aware of this. One of the things that we don't pay enough attention to in children, though, is their protein levels. We give kids snacks frequently when we're doing preschool and childcare, but we may not be using high protein snacks. And that can make all the difference because protein helps the blood sugar level stay consistent. So it's actually more important to incorporate some kind of protein with every snack on a regular basis for kids. And that is a really important thing to check. How well are we doing with water and protein throughout the day? That can be a game changer for some kids and us. And sleep. So periods of rest throughout the day, a place where a child can just go lie down and do what Donald Duck is doing here. So go ahead and, again, you can pause after each of these and discuss these and fill them in on your checklist. But it's really important to consider all of these very carefully, because they do contribute to the inability to use executive function skills. Even if you have them developed, you may not be able to make use of them in the same way. And also sensory overload issues. How much movement am I getting? This is I call it the my clothes itch me syndrome. These are things that all children to one degree or another have going on right now. And the occupational therapists that I work with talk a lot about how regulation of young children's sensory neurosystems is very challenged since COVID. So we need to be very aware of those, help children have movements that are integrating, that involve a lot of time outside, but also a lot of right-left movement, walking, playing games that cause you to go from one side to the other, like throwing a beanbag back and forth, throwing a ball back and forth. Also keeping in mind that there need to be alternating periods of quiet and movement. So look at your classroom schedule. Does it allow for that? Again, this is just a checklist. You can pause these and then fill in where you think you are with this. We're just evaluating. So there's no judgment. There's no, just, let's go through this and look at this carefully when we're thinking about the children in our classrooms and ourselves, and also if there is one child or two that you're really concerned about. This is a great kind of a checklist that you can even share with parents at a parent conference, that you can say, okay, we checked this, what does it look like at home? Can you go through the checklist with us to help us? So hopefully that's something that can prove beneficial for you. How are you breathing? Are you breathing? Something that many people do not understand is that when you're stressed, your breath can actually stop. And then you'll catch your breath, so to speak. So how often throughout the day are you doing deep breathing with children, breathing exercises? There are lots of them that are really simple to do. So I would recommend that you incorporate those into your schedule. Regular times where you stop and let's just say, let's stop and breathe for a moment. And you can just do a simple breathe in for the count of 4, breathe out for the count of 4. Just very basic kinds of, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. Very simple kinds of breathing exercises. So again, you can pause this video and talk to yourself, your partner, your colleague, talk to yourself, of course, and just make a note. Are we going to incorporate more of this? Where are we going to put it? So all of that you can put into the handout that you'll have. Okay. So now we're going to move on to cultural context and thinking about young children as having a cultural context, and thinking of it like an onion that you're peeling back the layers of. So you start with, what's on the outside layer? What is the outside cultural context? What do I see? Well, I see a little boy or a little girl before me. And we know that those identities can change. It's oftentimes children grow up and become adults, or even in childhood, declare that, they feel more, no, I'm actually a boy or I'm actually a girl. So, but for now, we are going to look at what am I seeing on the outside? Is this child dark skinned? Is this child light skinned? Is this child white? Is this child, you know, wearing anything like is it a Jewish family that maybe there's a yarmulke on the child's head? What does the outside of the child present with, basically? So think about, what are the outside presentations of culture that you see, and become aware of those. Become aware of what your thoughts are about those. And then keep peeling back the layers of the onion. So maybe the next layer is, well, I know this child has brothers and sisters that they live with. And you keep peeling back. Well, I also know that this child lives with their grandparents. I also know that this child lives only with their father or only with their mother, or back and forth between the two, or maybe lives in a home with a mother and a father and a grandmother living in the home. There can be all kinds of peeling back the layers as you go to understand the culture of the child. Is this child living in a home where there's many languages spoken? Is this child living in a home where there are faith-based practices throughout the day, such as a Muslim family that prays several times a day, or a Jewish family that has their Shabbat on Friday and Saturday? So is it a Christian family that practices their faith-based work on a Sunday, where they go to a faith-based space? Or is this a family that does not have a faith-based practice? And you just keep going. Is this a family that I've heard a lot about how they go camping a lot? So you keep peeling back the layers. What cultural contexts are there for this family that the child is part of? And that way you get to the heart of the child. So it's really important that you go through this really on behalf of every child in your classroom, so that you have an in-depth understanding and picture of this child. And I often have teachers actually create for themselves a little meditation that they do, where they look at the child and they see the family standing behind the child, and they respect that family, even if they don't agree with that family or they have misgivings about that family, that we let those go and understand, no matter what we feel, these people are the child's family, and that is their culture, so to speak. So looking at all of those layers to get to the heart of the child. So what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the recording and just take one or two of the children in your classroom and talk this through, and maybe make a little representation of the child layer by layer, so that you can really get a good picture of that child without using their name or an actual photo. Just layer by layer. You could just draw the circles and write into the circles if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and let you work on that. You pause this, and I'll see you back when you come back. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to work on in the list, the chart checklist, is the 4 steps to winning cooperation. And you have that, you have a short list of those and an article to look at. Those come from Jane Nelson's Positive Discipline program. So what I'd like you to do is, with your partner, again, go through those and make some notes in the sheet that you'll submit for independent study credit about your takeaways from what you learned from that and how you might see yourself using it. This I'm going to skip over because the only thing I'm going to do is have you identify possibly things that you already know and are doing. I was going to play some games with you and do some storytelling activities with you. Instead, I'm going to ask you, what games are you playing that help children with impulse control? Red light, green light is the obvious one. Simon Says, that kind of thing. Anything that allows children to stop and start and stop and start and be able to control that. And we understand that they don't control it yet, but they're learning to. This could be something like, we're all going to talk silly talk for count to 10, and then we're going to stop. And then we're going to be silly talk again, and then we're going to stop. So anything where you're stopping and starting is helping them with impulse control. They need all the practice they can get. So just simple things like hop 3 times and stop. That kind of thing. So make a list of those kind of games that you play, and then make a list of the things that you do with story. If you look at the executive function pages that have strategies and activities, you'll see some information there about that. Also, look at your schemas of play. I'm not going to go through, we've talked about breathing and calming the regulation system already. I'm not going to go through nonverbal communication options or heavy work right now, but I do want you to look at the schemas of play. And there are many of them. So you're going to go through each of those pages, and I want you to create a list of the things that you're already doing to make sure that children have those opportunities. And that should take you a while to do. So again, you'll be pausing and working through that. I'm going to skip this particular part of the process, and then I want you to, in the Let's Get Real section, look at some of the things we've talked about and build into your schedule anything new. Like, are you going to build in new opportunities to drink water? Check on protein, do breathing, make sure the right movement, quiet relationship is there. Anything you want to do with your schedule. And then that's something that you can go over as you're working together independently. So you can pause it or you can keep going and then go back to this on the sheet. In your classroom resources, make a list of what do you have in order to work on these executive function pieces in particular, and what do you need? And I'm not going to go over the sharing is caring problem because sharing and caring is a problem if you don't have enough resources. So I'm not going to address that in this particular independent study, but it's something to keep in mind when you think about resources. Do you have enough of everything? And if you don't, what do you need? And then you may want to even create an action plan for how you can find a way to have those kinds of things if you don't have the financial means to get them. Are you getting outside enough? And that's something I want you to look at in terms of your schedule, but are you as a teacher getting outside enough? And getting fresh air, walking, whatever it is you're able to do, even if it's just sit outside. And looking at supervision, are you clear throughout the day about who is doing what in your space in terms of your relationships with your colleagues and coworkers? Because that is a really big, important part of what I want you to look at in your schedule and in terms of your own managing input, which is executive function. What am I in charge of? What do I need to do throughout the day? And how does my day go for me? So I'm hoping that you can work on these as an independent study. And if you take time to do these,